Fred McCoy and Sheila McCoy with the Hatfield McCoy Museum in Liberty, Kentucky. FredMcCoy.com or Hatfield's McCoy's Museum.com. Today we're going to be doing a history lesson, more or less. It's not a correction to anybody. It's just something that we felt was interesting. In fact, we put it in our book. Again, there's our almost a 900-page book, Monument for a Murderer. Mm-hmm. And it's about bad Frank Phillips and what Frank did during the feud and who he was. And if you'll notice that symbol right there, Kentucky State Police, and the head of this chapter was, the title was Frank Phillips, Kentucky's first state police trooper. Well, let's see. Let's talk about that a little bit. Because in 1887, he was appointed special law enforcement officer to the governor of Kentucky. But prior to that, Frank Phillips was a deputy sheriff in Pike County, and he done an outstanding job. He done an excellent job as a deputy sheriff until he got involved with the Hatfield and McCoy feud and bringing back Hatfields from West Virginia. He actually killed two of the Hatfield gang. He killed Tom Dempsey and he killed Jim Vance, and he brought the 9 prisoners back, including Cotton Top Hatfield. What happened there was the sheriff at that time was Devil Lance Hatfield's cousin, and my great-great-grandfather, or great-great-uncle rather, Preacher Ance's brother, Basil Hatfield. And Basil Hatfield was the sheriff of Pike County during that time, and he fired Frank Phillips as a deputy sheriff. And after he fired him, the governor of Kentucky, the 30th governor, Simon Buckner, appointed Frank as a special law enforcement officer with statewide arrest powers to apprehend and arrest members of the Hatfield, West Virginia Hatfield gang. Now, the question here is, was Frank Phillips the first Kentucky State police officer? And we say that he was. And the reason why is the Kentucky State Police was not formed until 1948. Frank Phillips was appointed in 1887, the 10th day of September of 87. You know, you might say that Frank Phillips was the first state police officer in the United States. I was looking through here a few minutes ago, and I think the first state to have a state police agency was Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania formed their state agency on May the 2nd, 1905, which was over 18 years after Kentucky had appointed Frank Phillips as their state agent. So I'm sure the West Virginia Hatfields will not want to accept Frank Phillips as the first Kentucky State police officer or state trooper, but in fact he was. He was the first law enforcement officer in the state of Kentucky that was given statewide powers by the governor of Kentucky, the same that goes on today when they graduate the academy and they become state police officers. So I think that without a doubt is our first Kentucky State Police trooper. Sheila, you got anything on, any thoughts?
No, I think he was a good person.
Oh, Frank was. Frank was, you know, the West Virginia Hatfields are never going to brag on Frank Phillips. I think Devil Lance Hatfield was scared of a lot of people, but, you know, the story is, a lot of the historians, they say the only person that Devil Lance Hatfield was afraid of was Frank Phillips. I think he was afraid of a lot of people. We were talking earlier
Yeah.
about how Devil Lance would come up with all these places to go and to raid and things to do, but when it come time to do them,
He wasn't there. He's missing in action.
missing in action. He was sick. He was supposed to have not been there when Asa Harmon was killed.
Right.
He was supposed to not been there when the McCoy boys were shot at the trees. He was supposed to not been there when they burnt the cabin down.
Yeah.
He was going, but he got sick and he backed out. In fact, there was 13 other men going in all, but after Devil Lance backed out, some of them backed out, and there was only 9 that actually reported to the McCoy cabin, because they said, hey, if the old man's sick and he's not able to go, I think I'm coming down with the flu. Or that was the word of it, according to.
So that was his, what do you call it, M.O.
Oh, that was his, yeah, that's his modus operandi. That's the way he operated.
Yep.
He was good at sicking them on people. He was like Adolf Hitler. He could start it, he could get it going, and he could get things done. But he didn't want to do it himself. He always had somebody else to.
He just controlled the strings.
Anyway, that's this segment on Frank Phillips. We hope that was interesting to you. We have several items in the museum. In fact, I was looking through this book here. Here's Frank and Nancy's marriage license and bond.
Yep.
And of course, we've done a video on them before, but Frank and Nancy went to their graves together. They're buried together and had a long life together. And
Where's that?
what was it?
His gravesite. Don't we have that
It's
in
on
here?
the next page,
Oh,
I
okay.
believe. There's where they buried his leg.
Yeah.
There's a younger picture of him. And then down at the bottom is his graveyard where him and Nancy are buried. And there's Pike County Judge dedicating the cemetery back during that time, Judge Rutherford, Wayne T. Rutherford. And in fact, here, while we're here, let's just do this next story on the next page. This is the police monument in Pike County, Kentucky. And got nothing to do with the feud, but if you're ever in Pike County, Kentucky, and out in front of the courthouse, they've got this big police memorial of police officers that's been killed in the line of duty, and they're honoring them, which is great.
They should.
And you won't believe how many, over 40 years of working in law enforcement, how many funerals I've gone to of other slain officers. But on this memorial right here in Pike County is Frank Phillips' son, who was also a deputy sheriff in Pike County years later, and he was shot and killed when 2 of the guys that he was trying to arrest shot him. And shot or stabbed. I need to review the story. Again, this is not really Hatfield McCoy history. This is just something, but they, and I think he, despite being mortally wounded, he was able to return fire and seriously wounded one of the suspects. The other brother was taken into custody, and so that's interesting that his son went on to follow in his footsteps to become a Pike County deputy sheriff.
That's awesome.
Until the next time, it's Fred and Sheila McCoy with the Hatfield McCoy Museum. Thanks for joining us.